Thanks for joining us. I'm Megan Roberts. It's a wrap on the Western Premiers Conference tonight. Leaders of the three territories, Alberta, BC, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, have all been in Yellowknife for their annual two-day conference. The premiers were set to talk about a range of issues, from tariffs and trade to energy and Arctic security. The CBC's Sydney Cohen joins me now live in studio. She just got back from the Western Premiers Conference. So what were some of the main takeaways from that press conference, Sydney?
So trade was really at the forefront. The premiers issued a statement after the conference saying that the United States' unjustified and unreasonable tariffs are creating financial uncertainty for workers and businesses in Western Canada. They said they believe in a Team Canada approach to responding to U.S. tariffs, and they want tariff revenues directed to businesses and workers who are impacted. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith says Albertans are frustrated that it's easier for her province to do business with the United States than it is to do business with other jurisdictions in Canada. Speaking about the North, Yukon Premier Ranch Pillay says the territories are unique in that they have the highest concentration of modern treaties, and these include pre-existing agreements. He was asked about the idea of a northern trade zone. He said the North has that government leaders, can't make any unilateral decisions without sitting down with Indigenous governments and figuring out what's best for Northerners. Pillay wants to see more work taking place between the three territories.
We made significant progress in the conversation today around this northern and western trade relationship, but also we'll be looking to speak with the federal government when it comes to the trade zone, because as Northerners, what we've always seen is economic activity, for the most part, moving north-south. We need to see economic activity as well, moving east-west.
NWT Premier R.J. Simpson said during internal trade talks, the territory is pushing the fact that the North is different, and that, the NWT, for example, is a small and developing economy.
We need to ensure that when we're spending money in the North, that it's benefiting Northerners. We're not opposed to inviting companies from other parts of Canada to come up here and do business and work, but we need to make sure that we have the ability to support local businesses so that we don't just become a colony for the rest of Canada.
Okay, and I understand, Sydney, that there was also talk about what they want from the federal government.
Yeah, so the Premier's statement says they're happy to hear that the Prime Minister's made a commitment to an Arctic security corridor that would connect Edmonton, Yellowknife, and the Port of Grays Bay and Nunavut. They say they're strengthening infrastructure and that strengthening infrastructure and the military presence in the North will also foster economic development. It'll lower costs and raise the standard of living. The premiers are calling on the federal government to, invest more in critical infrastructure and in defense infrastructure in the North. All the Canadian premiers are meeting with Prime Minister Mark Carney in Saskatoon in just under 2 weeks, and they'll surely bring lots of what they talked about, the Western premiers, what they talked about to that meeting with Carney.
Okay, we'll certainly be keeping an eye on that as well. Thank you so much for your work, Sydney.
Thank you.
On Friday, we could see more than 50,000 Canada Post workers back on the picket line. There's still no deal between Canada Post and the union representing the workers. The mail carrier rejected the union's offer to delay a potential strike. Sophia Harris has more on how the uncertainty is impacting businesses.
At this greeting card and gift store, many online orders are sent by Canada Post. So another possible work stoppage would be devastating.
It's definitely going to affect our business. It's not great. It's a lot of extra work, and it's, worrisome.
Canada Post's month-long strike last year ended when its 55,000 employees were ordered back to work, so negotiations could resume. On Wednesday, the Crown Corporation made a last-ditch offer. It includes a more than 13% wage increase over 4 years and 6 personal days a year. But it also calls for the creation of part-time jobs to give the corporation more flexibility. The union followed by proposing a 2-week pause on the potential labor disruption to review the offer, saying in a statement, "We need to properly assess it. The stakes couldn't be higher." However, Canada Post said no to the proposed pause, even though it's deep in debt, having lost about $3 billion since 2018. Why would Canada Post reject a 2-week delay?
When the financial statements are released sometime this summer for the last 12 months, I believe that we're going to see a much larger loss. And so I think that the Canada Post is realizing that delays are not going to address this problem.
If a deal isn't reached, mail delivery may stop altogether on Friday, causing further financial problems for Canada Post.
How likely do you think it is that the union will accept Canada Post's offer and we will get our mail on Friday?
I think it's unlikely.
This business professor says a big sticking point for the union, Canada Post wants to hire part-time workers to cut costs and deliver on weekends.
I think they see it, they do see it as a slippery slope to a much smaller Canada Post and a much smaller union as a consequence.
Canada Post says it's now up to the union to make the next move. The union says it's analyzing the corporation's offer and working on counter-offers. Sophia Harris, CBC News, Toronto.
In the Yukon, Canada Post employees aren't sure if they'll be delivering mail or walking the picket line on Friday, and they say this is not the outcome they wanted.
People inside are feeling stressed and anxious. Like I said, there is no appetite here, and I think across the country, to go out again.
Clohan says the latest offer would lengthen some workers' routes. He says some of them already walk 20 kilometers a day, and adding more time could be hazardous, especially in winter. The pending strike could close most Northwest Territories post offices, but in the streets of Yellowknife, people we spoke to aren't too worried.
Not a big impact, no, not really. I like cooking up my meal every day, but not usually too much in there.
I'm not expecting too many things coming in the next little bit by post. Yeah.
There is work underway to minimize more serious impacts for people, like those in small communities who get prescriptions by mail. The Yellowknife Shoppers Drug Mart is the pharmacy for many small communities. The pharmacist there says people can call their local health centers to get prescriptions filled during a strike. The Calgary Police Service says it is not investigating the Nunavut RCMP over a death in Pond Inlet earlier this month. The RCMP previously told CBC that Calgary police would investigate after a man died during an interaction with officers. RCMP now say that's off the table due to capacity issues. However, Calgary police will conduct a review of the RCMP's investigation once it's completed. The territory has agreements with both the Calgary and Ottawa police to investigate incidents involving Nunavut's police force. The RCMP say once an external investigator is available, they will conduct an investigation if they deem it appropriate to do so. A Whitehorse man has pleaded guilty to charges related to his part in a robbery and police chase last year. Cody Smith was one of the men arrested after the incident. Jackie Hong has more.
Smith pleaded guilty to 2 counts last month, robbery using threats of violence and fleeing in a vehicle while being pursued by police. The charges are related to an incident last May. It began with a truck being stolen from a construction company's compound. 2 masked people then robbed a convenience store and fled the scene in that truck. That triggered a high-speed police chase that ended when a police vehicle rammed into the side of the truck, causing it to spin out. Smith admits to being part of the robbery. He was also driving the truck as it was being chased by police. Smith was released on bail after entering the pleas. He's currently undergoing an assessment to see if the rest of his case can be handled by a wellness court instead of regular sentencing. Charges against another man also arrested after the incident are still before the courts. Jackie Hong, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Tasuyak in Nunavik has lost one of its oldest buildings to a fire. It began Wednesday around 9 p.m. The smoke forced the local school to close for the day. Tasuyak's mayor says they deployed all of the community's resources to try to put out the flames, but they were unsuccessful. He says the building was once the community's old school, where many elders have cherished memories.
So many people have gone to school there. Some of them are elders now. People went to school there in the 1970s and 80s. It brought back so many memories for many people, and many people started talking about how the old school had caught fire.
Until now, the building was used as a youth center for community events and as housing for transient workers. Anunuk says they don't know the cost of the losses yet. Water is now starting to flow through a temporary pipe in Pevurnituk, Nunavik. The Kativik regional government says the pipe was laid down overnight. For now, the village remains under a state of emergency due to the ongoing water shortage. The state of emergency in Pevurnituk began 2 months ago when a critical pipe connecting the water pumping station to the treatment plant froze. There is still ongoing work to clear snow on the road to the pump station.
The temporary pipeline will fill up the water pumping station where the water trucks get their water from. So it will continue the services delivering water to each resident.
Water and sanitary products are still being flown in by the Quebec government, and local Canadian Rangers are assisting on the ground. Snowball says external support will continue for as long as the state of emergency is in place. It's wildfire season, and in the Northwest Territories, there have already been a number of fires, almost all caused by people. In the NWT legislature today, one MLA asked how the Territories' Department of Environment and Climate Change prepared for this season. Take a listen.
What did the ECC do to prepare for the 2025 wildfire season? Mussy.
I'd like to start off by saying that, it's early days in the season for 2025, and to date, one thing that our ECC staff did is they've already responded to 10 fires in the Northwest Territories, and unfortunately of those 10 fires, 9 were human cause. I'm happy to report that all 10 have been declared out. ECC has also done a lot of work that we've scanned for holdover fires to ensure that we're able to properly and proactively address those. We've brought our firefighters on earlier and done larger training engagements across the Northwest Territories with more centralized groups interacting from multiple regions. We've done cross-training between structural and ECC firefighters, and this has started and will continue through the summer to ensure that we have a coordinated effort if we run into instances of wildland-urban interface fires. We've worked with the NWT Association of Communities and held a wildfire preparedness workshop in Yellowknife in April 23rd to 25th. We had participants from all across the NWT, Mr. Speaker, senior staff, community governments, fire chiefs, Indigenous governments, Indigenous organizations, structural firefighters, and from all accounts, it was a very successful endeavor.
How is the Department of ECC implementing the recommendations from the external 2023 wildfire response review? Mussy.
The MNP report that came out last year had a number of recommendations for the department, and we've agreed in principle with all of the recommendations that were put forward, and we've already started planning or implementing many of them. Our crews and aircraft were brought on earlier to complete training. That was one of the recommendations. We've gone through and started to the members' point, a collaborational effort with MACA and the rest of the GNWT to build capacity within the incident command system. We've recently implemented a qualification and certification standard across the territory. We have installed backup communications in most locations. We brought on a safety officer to help deal with health as well as mental health concerns of our staff and our members. And we've been successful in obtaining significant federal funding that will assist in implementing a wide range of wildfire prevention and mitigation and response actions.
That is the NWT Minister of Environment and Climate Change talking about wildfire preparation for this year. At a key meeting in Nunavut this week, Leaders are saying collaboration is critical if they want to keep the spotlight on Arctic sovereignty and northern investment. Carl Cardinal brings us the details.
On Tuesday, Nunavut Tunngavik Incorporated and the government of Nunavut held a joint meeting in Iqaluit. The goal was to strengthen their partnership and prepare for the upcoming Arctic Sovereignty and Security Summit in June. Jeremy Tungaluk is the president of NDI. He says this cooperation is crucial to lobby the federal government for long-term investment.
The way Canada has worked in the past is how they come into Nunavut and they build the infrastructure. But moving forward now is a critical time for Inuit to have a really good say in what happens in Nunavut. And the attitude has really shifted from both governments.
Both parties discussed closing the territory's infrastructure gap, highlighting projects like the Grace Bay Road and the Givalik Hydrofiber Link. Premier PJ Akiagok says the meeting produced a joint work plan outlining clear role for both NTI and the territorial government.
And we look forward to coming together with everyone and really bringing a strategy that comes from the people, that comes from Nunavut.
With the Arctic Sovereignty Summit just weeks away, parties are ready to present a united front, ensuring federal support for long-term development in the north. Carl Cardinal, CBC News, Iqaluit.
The Vice President of Nunavut Tunngavik Incorporated is looking to increase opportunities for Inuit in the trades. Paul Ingout hopes it'll be at the top of the agenda at this year's Nunavut Housing Forum. He says more Inuit labor is important to the sustainability of Nunavut.
We want to train them so that they have jobs in the future for within their communities. So it's part of the thriving Inuit community that we want to see.
Jimmy Main is the Vice President of Operations for the Nunavut Housing Corporation. He says more Inuit labor isn't just good for people, it's good for business.
And certainly look to see if we can move the needle on the number of Inuit workers in the construction workforce. It's certainly going to be a discussion point at the forum. There's going to be some dedicated sessions on workforce advancement and how we can increase the number of Inuit in the residential construction industry. So it's something dear to our hearts because really importation of external labor is a cost driver.
The forum will run from June 9th to 12th in Iqaluit. 300 housing stakeholders from Nunavut and other parts of the country are expected to attend. There's a new space for Indigenous entrepreneurs in Winnipeg, and it's the first of its kind in Canada. The space will focus on economic reconciliation. Felicia Adam was there for the grand opening.
These enclosed meeting rooms are going to hold like 2 to 6 people. We consider them communal desks where entrepreneurs can come.
It's empty now, but soon these offices will become learning hubs, spaces for opportunity, inspiring and empowering Indigenous entrepreneurs. Winido Ginide Tashke Zing Entrepreneurship Center, or WeTech.
What we talked about was building a place for us by us.
Kathleen Blue Sky is the head of WeTech. While it's the first of its kind in the country, Blue Sky says Indigenous people have always been entrepreneurs.
It's unlocking that mindset again to bring people back into the space where they naturally think as entrepreneurs and how to create their own opportunities and how to create the relationships for those opportunities to be successful.
The province put $500,000 into the center, and in collaboration with universities and colleges, participants can get certifications and micro-credentials through mentoring and training workshops.
There's a lot of potential in growing on our Indigenous graduates from the Asper School of Business, using that within our alumni and network to really give back to the communities.
Catherine Davis is part of the Asper School of Business. She's Red River Métis, and for her, the center is a place of belonging. She says taking away barriers Indigenous entrepreneurs often face.
For many years, especially when we look at Indian Act economics, Indigenous people haven't been included in the economy, and that's been purposeful, that's been intentional. So to have a center like this where Indigenous people, a First Nations-led center where there is that sense of belonging, that really, I think, sets all people up for success.
WeTech is open to Indigenous entrepreneurs from across Canada. Blue Sky says the first group will start training in July. Felicia Adam, CBC News, Winnipeg.
A new report is putting a spotlight on access to mental health care for young women and girls. Statistics Canada data shows disorder rates are high, but the number of those who seek and get help is not. Alison Northcott has more.
This is our big intervention room.
This Montreal Youth Health Clinic aims to break down barriers for young people looking for help.
We offer mental health support.
More than 70% of the clients here are girls and young women.
A lot of our youths are suffering from social anxiety, so they're scared of what might happen when they seek their services. They have confronted with closed doors in the past.
A new report found 4 out of 10 Canadian girls and women between the ages of 15 and 29 met the criteria for mental health or substance use disorders in 2022, but just a little more than half of them accessed formal support. The report points to availability, costs, and a lack of confidence in the healthcare system. Emma Bachner has navigated that system and its waiting lists.
Substance use being one of them, eating disorders, self-harm.
Now, 6 years sober, she says services need to meet young people where they're at.
Having that kind of ability to build a rapport with somebody through personal experiences and through trauma-informed lenses, I think, again, is crucial.
The report also found when racialized girls and women accessed support, they were less likely than their non-racialized peers to find those services helpful.
Many people are having difficulty finding providers that speak their preferred language. Many people have difficulty finding providers in their communities or in their own ethnic groups. So right there, those are going to be problems.
There are access challenges.
Dr. Joe Henderson says now further studies are needed to better understand how other young people are doing.
We really have to be careful to not understand this to mean that young men are not struggling with mental health related concerns, but just maybe not the ones we've asked about or in the ways that we've asked.
So they feel comfortable coming
because
here.
They say these findings are just one piece of a much larger puzzle. Alison Northcott, CBC News, Montreal.
Many of the world's most influential economic officials and politicians wrapped up 3 days of meetings in Banff today. Lots of issues were on the table, but as Anis Haidari reports, tariffs weren't on the official agenda.
We had productive and frank discussions.
There's a push for sustainable economic growth from the finance ministers of the G7 as they wrap up 3 days of meetings in Alberta. And those meetings did include senior U.S. officials. Despite tariffs from the United States causing economic upheaval in recent months, Canadians say the Americans were an important part of the meetings.
Well, listen, I won't go into the specific of our discussion. We get along well. That's what I can tell you. I was delighted that Secretary Bessent came for the entirety of the G7 meeting. We had discussion on a number of issues. I can tell you the Secretary's contribution was welcomed by all the G7 colleagues.
Tariffs may have been on many people's lips, but they weren't on paper. The unanimously signed statement from the G7 finance ministers and bankers did not mention them, but clearly it's on their minds.
While it's fairly obvious that international trade will never be the same again, it's also pretty clear that there will be further negotiations.
We clearly have more work to do.
And Canada's own central banker says he's not sure Canada has a rosy economic future unless tariffs change.
Where we go from there, I think, really depends on what happens to tariffs. I know Canada is keen to sit down with the United States and work through our differences, come to an agreement. I think if we can get that clarity, we can get back to growth. Clearly, if things move in the other direction, yes, it'll be worse.
This meeting is just the first gathering of these nations in the coming weeks. Next month sees the global leaders of the G7 coming to nearby Kananaskis, including Donald Trump. Anis Haidari, CBC News, Banff.
Nunavut has released its new license plate design. It incorporates Nunavut's flag, including the yellow outline, the North Star, and the Inukshuk in the middle of the plate. The government of Nunavut says the plates will be made available in the summer. The deadline for Nunavut's annual Inuktitut songwriting contest has been extended to June 4th. This is Kilaut's 10th anniversary. Participants can submit original songs in Inuktitut under the themes of When I Was Growing Up and Inuit Creations. This year's prizes are $5,000 for first place, $2,500 for second place, and $1,500 for third place. 7 other participants will also receive $500 each. The winners will be professionally recorded for a compilation and have the opportunity to perform at 3 live concerts in Nunavut. And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.